the sheer, it just engulfs you. It's like, you just feel it, it makes you vibrate.
Eddie Van Halen sat quietly in the audience as a teenage guitarist stood frozen under the stage lights, being torn apart by a talent show judge in front of an entire school. The boy's fingers still hovered over the strings, his confidence unraveling with every word. Eddie didn't interrupt. He didn't move. He simply watched and waited. But what happened in the next 10 minutes would become a turning point that the young guitarist would carry for the rest of his life. It was a chilly afternoon in November 1981, and Burbank High School's annual Fall Talent Showcase had already slipped 40 minutes behind schedule. Inside the main auditorium, nearly 600 students, parents, and faculty filled the space, some seated in neat rows of fixed chairs up front, others shifting in folding seats that creaked with every movement. The stage itself was surprisingly formal, framed by heavy curtains and lit by aging spotlights.
Oh, it was absolutely frightening. Because, we already went through that in Holland, first day, first grade.
The sound system, managed by the school's enthusiastic but inexperienced AV club, buzzed faintly between performances. The mood in the room had that unmistakable high school energy, an uneven blend of excitement and obligation. Some watched closely, invested in every performance, while others were simply there because they had to be. The result was a kind of shared attention that felt warm, yet restless, like a crowd waiting for something unexpected to happen. Seated in the 7th row was Eddie Van Halen, dressed simply in a plain jacket and dark jeans, blending in far more than anyone might expect from one of the most electrifying guitarists in the world. He wasn't there for attention. He hadn't come as a guest of honor. He was there because of an old friend, Pete Callahan, a rhythm guitarist from Eddie's early Pasadena days, whose daughter was performing that afternoon. 2 weeks earlier, Pete had called him with a casual invitation. Nothing fancy, just a school event. Eddie agreed without hesitation, the same way he always said yes to live music, no matter how small the stage or how raw the talent. For him, music wasn't about status, it was about the moment. By now, the show had been running for over an hour and 20 minutes. The audience had seen a little of everything: a jazz piano duo that showed promise, a magician whose tricks landed about half the time, a couple of vocalists with varying levels of confidence, and a comedian whose timing needed serious work. One standout had been a violinist performing a piece by Johannes Brahms, not perfect, but filled with enough emotion to draw genuine applause from the crowd. Off to the side of the stage sat the judges' panel, 3 adults behind a long table, each armed with a clipboard and a scoring sheet. After every act, they offered brief feedback through a shared microphone.
Now you're in a whole country where you can't speak the language, and you know absolutely nothing about anything. And yeah, it was beyond frightening. I don't even know how to explain.
Leading the panel was Gerald Cross, a seasoned music teacher from a nearby school. With over 2 decades of experience and a firm belief in proper technique, Cross carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had spent years correcting mistakes and shaping beginners. He believed in structure, in discipline, in doing things the right way. And now, as the teenage guitarist stood under the lights, Gerald Cross was making that belief painfully clear. Gerald Cross wasn't a cruel man. In fact, he genuinely cared about music, deeply. Throughout the afternoon, his feedback had been thoughtful, even helpful at times. He wasn't the type to dismiss effort or mock ambition, but he was precise, almost relentlessly so. And that precision, while valuable in a structured classroom, carried a different weight on a stage like this, especially when directed at a teenager standing alone under bright lights in front of peers, teachers, and family. Because there's a difference between teaching and judging, and sometimes that line gets blurred. The next performer after the violinist was a boy named Kevin Park.
And when you hear it glad all over, boom, 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 immediately we said, okay, enough piano. And
Kevin was 16 years old, a junior, and had been playing guitar for just 3 years. Everything he knew, he had taught himself. No formal lessons, no music theory classes, just hours of listening, trial and error, and a quiet determination that refused to quit. He learned from records, rewinding the same sections over and over again, chasing sounds he didn't yet have the language to explain, but somehow understood. Over the past 4 months, Kevin had been working on something personal, an original piece. It wasn't borrowed, it wasn't copied, it was his. Built from a chord progression he had slowly shaped during long evenings alone in his bedroom. For 6 weeks straight, he had refined it, adjusting small details, one note at a time. Every afternoon in the narrow window between school and dinner, he played it through from beginning to end, again and again, listening carefully, not with trained theory, but with instinct, with feeling. He stepped onto the stage holding a second-hand electric guitar, the kind that had clearly seen better days. His movements were careful, almost fragile, as he plugged into the school's amplifier. He adjusted the microphone stand, took a breath, and glanced out into the crowd, hundreds of eyes looking back.
But, I think it made us stronger because you had to. I mean, the school that we went to was still segregated at the time, believe it or not.
Then he began. For 3 minutes and 40 seconds, Kevin played. It wasn't perfect, far from it. His technique carried the unmistakable marks of being self-taught. His picking hand sat at an angle most instructors would correct immediately. His fretting hand tightened in moments where it needed to relax, slowing him down during transitions. Twice, his timing slipped, just enough to be noticeable to trained ears. But beneath those imperfections, there was something else. The composition itself had depth. It moved through 3 distinct sections, each one building naturally on the last. There was intention behind it, a melodic idea that evolved, grew, and resolved in a way that felt earned. And in the final 30 seconds, there was a shift, a sense of arrival that revealed something rare, real musical instinct, the kind that can't be easily taught. When he finished, the auditorium responded with applause, not explosive, not overwhelming, but real, honest. The kind of applause that says, "We saw what you tried to do, and it mattered." Kevin stood at the microphone, shoulders slightly tense, his expression caught somewhere between relief and uncertainty. He had made it through. Now came the part he couldn't control. At the judges' table, Gerald Cross reached for his microphone and clicked it on. "Thank you, Kevin," he began, his voice calm, measured, the tone of someone preparing to deliver something important. "I want to give you some honest feedback because I believe it will help you going forward." He glanced down at his scoring sheet. "Technically, there are some significant issues. Your picking hand position is going to limit your development long term. That angle creates tension, and tension like that will prevent you from progressing past a certain level."
Since we couldn't speak the language, we were considered a minority.
A few students in the audience shifted in their seats. Your timing was inconsistent in a couple of places, especially in the transition between your second and third sections. And while your composition shows ambition, he paused briefly, choosing his words, it lacks the structural foundation that typically comes from formal training. The room had grown noticeably quieter. Gerald leaned slightly closer to the microphone. "My honest recommendation," he continued, "is that if you're serious about pursuing music, you need to start with the fundamentals, lessons, theory, proper technique from the beginning." Another pause. "Because what you're doing right now," he said carefully, "is teaching yourself habits that will be very difficult to unlearn later." Another pause settled over the room. "You have enthusiasm," Gerald Cross added, his tone steady, almost clinical. "That's real, but enthusiasm without foundation will only take you so far." With that, he clicked off the microphone. The other two judges lowered their heads and began writing their scores, pens scratching softly against paper. But the auditorium had changed. The energy had shifted into something heavier, quieter. It was the kind of silence that fills a room when something uncomfortable has just happened and no one is quite sure how to respond. Kevin Park was still standing at the microphone. From the outside, he looked composed. His face hadn't collapsed. His posture hadn't broken. He was 16 years old, standing in front of hundreds of people he knew, and instinct told him to hold it together. But something had changed. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in the stillness of his body. 30 seconds ago, that stillness had been anticipation. Now it carried weight. In the seventh row, Eddie Van Halen had been watching everything unfold with a kind of focused calm. He hadn't reacted during the critique. He hadn't interrupted. But there was a sharpness in his attention, the kind that comes when someone hears something they fundamentally disagree with and is deciding carefully what to do about it. He waited until Gerald finished. Then, quietly, he raised his hand. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden movement, no attempt to draw attention. Just a simple gesture, the kind you'd see in a classroom or panel discussion. Ordinary, controlled, and yet the silence that followed it felt different. Something about the moment registered across the room before anyone could quite explain why. At the front, Ms. Reeves, the young English teacher coordinating the event, looked up from her clipboard. She hesitated, clearly unsure if audience participation was part of the plan. "Did you have a comment?" she asked cautiously. Eddie nodded slightly. "If that's okay." Gerald Cross turned his head toward him with a composed, almost practiced expression. He had seen this before, someone in the audience who disagreed with a judge's critique. He was ready for it. Ms. Reeves gave a small, uncertain smile. "Go ahead." Eddie stood. "I've been playing guitar since I was 7 years old," he said, his voice calm but carrying effortlessly to the back of the auditorium. Years of performing in massive venues had made projection second nature. "I hold my picking hand at a non-standard angle," he continued. "Always have. It's part of why I sound the way I do." There was a brief pause, not for drama, but because he was choosing his words carefully. "What Kevin just played," he said, "had two things that are actually very difficult to teach." Now the room was completely still. The first is melodic development, the idea he introduced in the beginning. It came back in the final section, but changed, evolved. That's compositional thinking. You can study theory for years and still not develop that instinct. A few heads in the audience began to lift. "The second," Eddie continued, "is that the piece went somewhere. It had direction. It resolved. A lot of technically skilled players never learn how to do that. They know everything, but they don't say anything." Gerald Cross was watching him more closely now, his expression shifting, subtly but noticeably. "I'm not saying technique doesn't matter," Eddie added. "It does. Kevin should absolutely take lessons if he wants to grow." Another pause. "But what you're calling bad habits," he said, looking toward the judges' table, "not all of those are problems. Some of them are the beginning of a voice." The words landed with quiet force. "And you have to be very careful," Eddie finished, "about which ones you try to correct." The auditorium fell into complete silence. On stage, Kevin Park stared toward the seventh row, his expression shifting in real time. Confusion gave way to focus. Focus softened into something deeper, something like understanding. And then, slowly, it settled into a new kind of stillness. Not the rigid stillness of someone bracing for judgment, but the grounded stillness of someone beginning to see themselves differently. At the judges' table, Gerald leaned forward slightly, studying the man who had just spoken. "And you are?" he asked. Before Eddie could answer, Pete Callahan, sitting right beside him, murmured the name under his breath. Eddie Van Halen. The effect was immediate, but not loud. It didn't explode into noise. It moved like a ripple. Across the auditorium, heads turned. A parent in the fourth row leaned toward the person next to her. Two students in the back exchanged stunned looks. A whisper passed from one row to another, spreading quickly but softly, like a current shifting direction. The atmosphere changed, not with a single dramatic reaction, but with the collective realization of hundreds of people all at once recalibrating what they had just witnessed. Gerald Cross leaned back in his chair. He was still composed, still professional. 22 years of experience didn't disappear in a moment. Gerald Cross adjusted slightly in his chair, still composed, still measured. Years of experience had trained him to handle disagreement with professionalism. But in this moment, he wasn't entirely sure how much of what had just been said should change his position. "I appreciate the perspective," he replied carefully, keeping his tone even. But the moment had already shifted. "Kevin?" Eddie Van Halen said, turning his attention back toward the stage. The boy looked at him directly now, no hesitation. "You wrote that piece yourself?" "Yes," Kevin answered, his voice steadier than before. There was something new in it, not confidence exactly, but direction. Eddie gave a small nod. "Then keep writing," he said. "Take the lessons, learn the theory, but don't stop creating your own music while you do it." He leaned back slightly, his tone calm but firm. "Don't let technique replace your instinct. They're supposed to grow together." And with that, he sat down. The moment passed, at least on the surface. The talent show continued like nothing had happened. Performers came and went. Applause rose and fell. Pete Callahan's daughter took the stage later and delivered a vocal performance that drew warm appreciation from the audience and solid scores from the judges. By the end of the afternoon, Kevin Park hadn't won anything. His scores placed him somewhere in the middle. Gerald Cross didn't revise his comments, didn't soften his technical critique. On paper, nothing had changed, but something had. After the show, the auditorium began to empty into the lobby. Parents gathered their children. Teachers stacked folding chairs with tired efficiency. Conversations blended into a low hum as the structured energy of the event dissolved back into the ordinary rhythm of the day. Near the exit, Kevin spotted Eddie. He hesitated for only a moment, then walked over. What he said next took less than 30 seconds, but it was something he had been building in his mind from the moment he stepped off that stage. "Thank you," Kevin said. That was how it started. Then the rest came out, honest, unfiltered. He admitted that before that afternoon he had been thinking about quitting. Not just performances like this, but guitar entirely. He didn't know if what he was doing even counted as music. Didn't know if he was just another kid playing alone in his bedroom, convincing himself it meant something. But now he was going to keep going. Eddie listened without interrupting. Then he nodded once, like the answer had already been decided. "That's the right call," he said. He told Kevin to find a teacher, someone who could guide his technique properly, but without making it feel like technique was the entire purpose. "Because it's not," Eddie said. "The music is the point. Technique just helps you express it better." He gestured lightly, almost casually. "That picking hand position they mentioned. Maybe it's something you'll need to adjust. Or maybe," he paused, "maybe it turns into something that's completely yours. something no one else could replicate. "The only way you find out," Eddie said, "is by playing long enough to discover it." The conversation lasted just 4 minutes. Then it ended as simply as it began. Pete Callahan walked over with his daughter. Conversations overlapped, and the afternoon moved forward, like all afternoons do. No grand finale, no dramatic closing, just life continuing. Kevin Park didn't become famous. He didn't headline arenas or redefine guitar the way the man he had met that day did. Instead, he played in local bands throughout his 20s, mostly around the San Fernando Valley. In his 30s, he kept writing music, quietly, consistently. And eventually, he found his way into teaching. First at a small community music school in Glendale, then later at a high school, the same district where years earlier he had stood under bright lights being told that what he was doing might need to be undone. His students described him in remarkably similar ways. He was the teacher who made you feel like what you were already doing mattered before showing you how to improve it. The teacher who corrected your technique without making you feel like technique was the only thing that counted. The teacher who understood that music wasn't just about getting it right, it was about saying something real. Kevin kept the composition he had played that afternoon. He never performed it again, not because he was ashamed of it, but because of what it represented. It wasn't just a piece of music anymore. It was a turning point, a line between almost quitting and choosing not to. Some people teach you how to play. Some people remind you why you started. The rare ones, the ones you remember for the rest of your life, know exactly which one you need in that moment. And sometimes they don't stand on stage. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in the 7th row, waiting, because waiting isn't hesitation. It isn't weakness, it's confidence. The kind that doesn't need to interrupt, doesn't need to perform, doesn't need urgency to prove its value. It simply knows that when the moment comes, what it has to say will be enough. Eddie Van Halen had that kind of confidence long before the world fully understood who he was. He had it in a high school auditorium in Burbank in November 1981, sitting in the 7th row, watching, waiting, and because of that, a 16-year-old boy who was ready to walk away from music chose instead to keep going. Years passed, and that quiet moment in a high school auditorium never made headlines. There were no cameras capturing it, no interviews replaying it, no official record of what had happened between a legendary guitarist and a nervous teenager standing on stage. But for Kevin Park, it became one of the most defining memories of his life, something far more powerful than applause or trophies. Because what stayed with him wasn't just the words, it was the timing. It was the fact that Eddie Van Halen didn't interrupt, didn't rush to correct, didn't try to dominate the moment. He waited, he listened. And when he finally spoke, it wasn't to prove someone wrong, it was to make sure someone else didn't give up. That distinction mattered. Kevin carried that lesson into every part of his life, into every rehearsal, every small gig, every late night spent writing music that no one else might ever hear, and eventually into every classroom he stood in as a teacher. He would watch his students carefully, not just how they played, but how they reacted when they made mistakes, when they hesitated, when they doubted themselves, because he recognized that look. He had lived it. And when the moment came, when a student stood at that invisible edge between continuing and quitting, Kevin knew exactly what to do. He didn't rush. He didn't overwhelm them with correction. He listened first. Then, like someone he once met, he chose his words with care. "Keep going," he would say. "We'll fix the rest together." That approach didn't just create better musicians. It created people who believed in their ability to grow, and maybe that was the real legacy of that afternoon. Not a performance, not a critique, but a decision. A single moment where someone chose to encourage instead of discourage, to guide instead of shut down, because talent can be fragile in the beginning. It doesn't need perfection right away. It needs space, it needs patience, and sometimes It just needs one person to see it clearly before the rest of the world does. Kevin never forgot that. And somewhere, in ways he could never fully measure, he passed that same moment forward, again and again, through every student who almost gave up, but didn't. That's how impact really works. Not always loud, not always visible, but lasting. So the next time you hesitate, the next time you wonder if what you're doing is good enough, remember this. Even the greatest didn't start perfect. Even they were told they were doing it wrong. But the difference is they kept going. And sometimes all it takes is one voice at the right moment to remind you why you should too. If this story meant something to you, if it made you think or reminded you of your own journey, take a second to hit that like button. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, untold stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.